Welcome to This Explainer. If you've been thinking about making the jump to electric, but you're just totally overwhelmed by the sticker shock out there, take a breath. You're in exactly the right place. We're going to cut right through all the noise, skip the luxury hype, and look directly at the data to find you a vehicle that actually makes financial sense. So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the affordable EV reality, the top new budget EVs, the used market hack, regional realities and trade-offs, and finally, the bottom line. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the affordable EV reality. Let's just set the baseline expectation right off the bat and define what an affordable electric vehicle actually looks like in today's market. I mean, if you've been window shopping lately, looking at those luxury electric trucks and high-end sedans pushing $80,000, maybe $90,000, you're probably asking yourself, are affordable EVs just a complete myth? And honestly, when the average price of a standard gas-powered new car is hovering right around $48,000, it's so easy to assume that brand new EV tech is just entirely out of reach for the everyday driver. It really feels like true affordability has just vanished. But actually, the data tells a much more encouraging story.
Look at this number, $25,000. The crucial point here is that budget-friendly EVs absolutely do exist. In North America, new models are currently clustering right around this $25,000 to $45,000 starting range. You might be wondering, why are we seeing this cluster right now? Well, it essentially boils down to dramatically falling battery production costs and incredibly scaled-up manufacturing. Now, I know 25 grand is still a very serious chunk of change, but if you put that in the context of modern new car prices, remember that $48,000 average we just talked about, this $25,000 mark? That represents the true entry-level tier for getting yourself into a brand new zero-emissions vehicle today. All right, moving on to Section 2, top new budget EVs. Let's take a walk through our virtual showroom and look at the specific new models that actually fit into this budget-conscious category. This brilliantly illustrates your primary options, and honestly, the landscape is surprisingly diverse when it comes to range and body style. You've got the Nissan Leaf starting right around $28,000, giving you about 149 to 212 miles of range in a really practical compact hatchback. Then there's the Hyundai Kona EV, which offers a great balanced subcompact SUV experience for 34 to 38 grand, pushing up to 260 miles of range. And hey, we've even got the Chevy Bolt in the mix. While it's mostly a used or clearance model at this point, it absolutely dominates that $20,000 to $28,000 bracket with a super impressive 259 miles of range. Now, what's really fascinating here is the stark contrast between the highly maneuverable Fiat 500e and the spacious Equinox SUV. It completely proves that budget definitely doesn't mean a one-size-fits-all vehicle anymore. Think about it. If you live in a dense, packed city, parallel parking a massive SUV is literally an absolute nightmare. The Fiat 500e, starting around 30 grand, is basically a precision tool built for the city. It's incredibly stylish, ridiculously easy to park, and packs a 42 kilowatt-hour battery that gives you about 140 to 150 miles. On the flip side of that, if you're hauling a family or taking longer road trips, the new Chevy Equinox EV starts around $35,000. It uses GM's new Ultium platform, which, by the way, is a super flexible next-generation battery architecture, allowing it to push right past 300 miles of estimated range. The only catch? The Equinox is so highly anticipated, you might be staring down a pretty long waiting list to actually get the keys to one.
We also really need to weigh the absolute cheapest new option, the Nissan Leaf, against the entry-level Tesla Model 3. Now, the Leaf is fantastic. It has over 10 years of proven, rock-solid market reliability. But, and this is a big but, older models and base versions use an outdated fast-charging standard called CHAdeMO. To put that into perspective for you, trying to find a working CHAdeMO charger on a modern road trip is honestly starting to feel a lot like trying to find a working payphone. It's tough. The Tesla Model 3, however, sits at the higher end of our affordable bracket. You're looking at roughly $38,000 to $44,000 depending on how you configure it. But in exchange, it gives you between 272 and 341 miles of range and crucially, access to the absolute gold standard, the Tesla Supercharger network. So it really becomes a perfect example of deciding, do you pay a bit more upfront for a vastly smoother long-term road trip experience?
Okay, let's jump to section 3, the used market hack. Because if those brand new sticker prices are still making you sweat a little bit, this is where we unlock true affordability.
$10,000. I mean, wow. This is the staggering drop-off you see when you enter the used EV market. Older models like the Chevy Bolt or the Nissan Leaf can just dramatically lower your barrier to entry. Think about your daily routine. If you're literally only drive 30 miles a day for work and maybe grabbing groceries, paying $40,000 for a 300-mile range battery makes absolutely zero financial sense, right? But at the $10,000 to $25,000 price point, the barrier to EV ownership completely shatters. Suddenly, early Tesla Model 3s, used Hyundai Kona Electrics, and definitely those Chevy Bolts become absolute steal of a deal commuter cars.
However, you're a smart shopper, so you know you have to balance those huge upfront savings against some very specific risks. The absolute biggest one, battery degradation. Think of an older EV kind of like an older smartphone. It might say 100% charge when you take it off the plug in the morning, but it drains much, much faster than it used to, especially if you take it out in the freezing cold. A $10,000 older Leaf might only give you 60 or 70 miles of real-world range on a chilly winter day. Plus, you'll likely be way outside of the original manufacturer warranty, and you might be stuck with those older, slower charging technologies we were just talking about. So yes, it's a brilliant financial hack, but you absolutely, positively have to do your homework on the specific battery health of the exact car you're looking to buy.
All right, on to section 4, regional realities and trade-offs. Geography completely changes the math here, so let's dive into how exactly where you live in the Americas drastically impacts what you'll pay and what you can even buy. Starting in the US, buyers actually have access to a really strong used market. But on the new side, sales are heavily dominated by the SUV form factor. And why is that? Well, American consumers just have an insatiable appetite for massive SUVs and trucks. So, naturally, automakers are prioritizing those larger, significantly more expensive segments to meet that demand. Because of that, it leaves a bit of a vacuum for cheap, compact, new cars on US dealership lots. And that reality often pushes budget-conscious buyers directly toward that excellent used market we just covered.
Now, looking north to Canada, the math changes pretty significantly. Higher taxes push starting prices way up, meaning Canadian buyers really have to rely heavily on local government incentive programs just to make the numbers work. Because of import dynamics and currency differences, a quote-unquote budget EV in Canada often easily blows right past the $40,000 mark. You're not just buying a car up there, you're having to navigate this really complex web of provincial and federal rebates just to make the out-of-pocket costs stomachable. And honestly, even when you do figure the math out, you might still be plagued by extremely limited availability at the actual dealerships.
And then Mexico represents a totally fascinating shift. Unburdened by the exact same import tariffs that we see further north, this highly price-sensitive market is experiencing a massive influx of deeply cost-optimized Chinese EVs. It is a huge geopolitical and automotive trend happening right now. The vehicles dominating the market down there are these smaller, deeply affordable compacts that completely redefine what entry-level actually looks like in North America, especially when you compare it to those SUV-heavy streets of the United States.
But look, regardless of where you live, evaluating any of these budget models means impartially weighing the pros and cons. It's totally a balancing act. On the one hand, your daily running costs are basically going to plummet. You're saving a ton of money on gas, and you have practically zero maintenance. I mean, no oil changes, no spark plugs, no complex transmissions to break down. Plus, the electric drive itself is just incredibly smooth and quiet. But on the other hand, we have to be real. You do have to accept a higher upfront purchase price compared to a base gas car. You're going to have to navigate a sometimes uneven public charging infrastructure if you're not driving a Tesla. And if you live in a cold climate, you will definitely experience a temporary but very significant reduction in your battery range during those freezing winter months.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the bottom line. Let's summarize all this data and match the absolute best options to your specific real-world needs.
Think of this as your unbiased cheat sheet. If you demand a brand new car for the absolute lowest possible price, go test drive the Nissan Leaf. If you want the ultimate bang-for-your-buck commuter and you don't mind buying used, you gotta hunt down a Chevy Bolt. If you're looking for a comfortable, middle-of-the-road SUV that really balances price and features, the Hyundai Kona Electric is just a fantastic choice. Now, if you need maximum range per dollar and you don't mind waiting for delivery, put your name down for the Chevy Equinox EV. And finally, if you're willing to stretch your budget just a little bit for top-tier tech and the single most reliable charging network on the continent, the entry-level Tesla Model 3 absolutely takes the crown.
So it all comes down to this. Which affordable EV actually fits your lifestyle and your driveway? Based on the real market data, the specific models available today, and your own local geography, affordability is definitely no longer a myth. It is literally just a matter of strategy. So take a really hard look at your daily commute, your local climate, and your budget. Ask yourself, with all these incredible new options on the table, what is the real cost of sticking with gas for another 5 years? And which of these electric vehicles is actually ready to take its place in your driveway?